Hey, tennis fans, you are listening to watching Matchpoint Canada, Canada's premier tennis podcast. I'm Ben Lewis, joined alongside Mike McIntyre. Not the first episode of 2026, but the first conversation between me and Mike on the podcast for 2026. Welcome back. Good timing here as you and I finally catch up. Australian Open qualifying is already underway, and a Canadian tennis legend has officially retired in Milos Raonic. A lot happening.
Lots to talk about to get things going, and I'm excited for it, man, as we kick off season number 8, I think, if my math is correct.
Right.
We started in 2019. We did have a year before that as well of the Southpaw Slice, as we were called back then.
Yep.
So, gosh, we're coming up on almost a decade of podcasting together, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I love it. Feeling fresh for the season, the new season with you, and so much to talk about. You mentioned right off the hop. So why don't we get to it with one of the Canadians that really put tennis on the map in our country in Milos Raonic, 8-time ATP Tour champion, 15 times, aside from that, a finalist, Wimbledon finalist, the most notable among those runner-up finishes, National Bank Open finalist back in 2013 in Montreal, and someone who really, when he came along, there wasn't a whole lot going on here in terms of singles results until him and really Jeannie Bouchard on the women's side came along and put us on that map.
Yeah, when you think of players in Canada on the tennis side who have paved the way for our future athletes, Milos Raonic becomes top of mind. And I think alongside Jeannie Bouchard, that pair brought in a completely new generation of tennis players and helped really explode tennis in this country. And, we owe a huge debt of gratitude for what Milos Raonic accomplished in his great career. Kind of incredible that he's retiring at the age of 35. I think injuries are also a huge part of his career, but still managed to accomplish so many feats. Wimbledon finals was, I think the top obviously accomplishment of his career, but as you mentioned, 8 ATP titles, represented Canada in Davis Cup numerous times, helping them reach the semifinals in 2013. And I'll say this, every single member of the 2022 team that won that historic title said it would not have been possible without Milos Raonic.
Yeah, well said. And that win, unfortunately for him, came during the season that he missed. He didn't play at all in 2022. We thought that was the last. Maybe we'd see him again, although privately to us, he did hint that he still wanted to come back. And he did that grass court swing in 2023. And he set the record for most number of aces in a men's best of 3-set match, which is crazy to come back after that amount of time and do it. And, my favorite memories of him, obviously, going back early, there was 2000, was it 2008 or 2010? 2010, I think, when him and Vasek Pospisil played doubles together in Toronto and knocked off Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal, which was kind of a celebrity pairing at the time, as they were ranked number 1 and 2 in the world. And that was electric on center court. Then he really, took off from there. He won San Jose at least a couple of times where we kind of saw him win his first hardware of his career and then duplicate that feat. But, key moments for me, 2013, the All-Canadian final between him and Vasek Pospisil was pretty cool for Canadian tennis. The final appearance in Montreal in 2020, and also in 2013, where he lost to Rafa Nadal. There's no shame in that, that's for sure. And then 2023, when he came back and made it to the final 16 in Toronto, in what turned out to be his last appearance on home soil in front of his parents, which got him super emotional to play in front of them and his family one last time. And he played terrific, and he knocked off a top 10 player in Francis Tiafoe in his first round match, which was a crazy best of 3 match that went the distance. And he really showed us that when he's healthy, he could still do big things. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, let's just for a moment talk about all of the injuries he had during his career. That definitely held him back from achieving, I think, possibly a whole lot more.
Yeah, look, he had hip surgery at a very young age, and he's been open about the fact that a lot of his injuries that he suffered over the years all kind of reverted back to that original injury which he suffered when he was about 20 years old. And we saw issues with the shoulder, with the quad, with the calf, which held him out for a long time towards the end there. Groin injuries. I remember one ATP 250 final, I think it was in Delray. He couldn't even take the court. I think it was against Jack Sock. He was scheduled to play. And I remember at the time being so disappointed, like, how can he not just like give the final a go? And you read reports years later saying he could barely get up out of bed, the following morning. But you think about how strong he would come back from these injuries time and time again. It's like he didn't really skip a beat when he was healthy. Look, quarterfinals are better at 10 majors, multiple semifinals runs in Australia, alongside that Wimbledon finals run. And for me, the reason he never really had the results at the US Open comparatively to those other two slams, and of course he wasn't a clay court guy, was it was always towards the tail end of the season when his body would start to break down.
Absolutely. I mean, that man broke almost every part of his body at some point in his career.
Yeah.
He even had bad luck, like he broke his toe, a couple of years ago after he had come back. He stubbed it on his bedpost or something, right? And flukiness, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, he carried around a big frame at what was he, 6 foot, or what is he, 6 foot?
6'5".
6'5", sorry, 6'5", and over 200 pounds. That's a lot to carry around on the court. He moved remarkably well for his size. I got to say, the way he would come in and work the net, and his volleys really came a long way over the course of his career. And he wasn't. I don't consider him a serve bot. Like I don't put him in the category of a John Isner, a Sam Querrey. I thought he had a lot more sort of. I don't know if grace is the right word, but a lot more movement, a lot more to his arsenal than just the serve,
Yeah.
which was obviously one of the greatest of all times. But I think for him, what held him back from achieving more consistent, greatness really is the injuries and the fact that he played. And this is the same with so many men over the last 15 years. He played during the same time as the big three, and you had Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, and Novak Djokovic winning just about every major that there was. Could Milos have won a Wimbledon if not for those guys? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would have put him in that next tier of favorites to win at Wimbledon. He always played well in Australia too at the beginning of the season when his body was fresh and he was ready to go out there, and he wasn't carrying around all those injuries after months and months of grinding it out on the tour. But yeah, I think if not for the big three, we would have seen a major, at least one major in his career. I think really they should have given him the Wimbledon trophy after his semifinal win over Roger Federer. I think anyone who beats Federer at Wimbledon
Yeah.
should have received the trophy for like one night and then gone out to play the final against Andy Murray and put it back on the line. But to me, how many guys beat Roger on grass? And Milos is one of the few.
Yeah, and look, if you have a chance to listen, check out my reaction podcast as well with the Rash Madani, who details some of these highlights of his career. Whether or not he would have won a Grand Slam, maybe that's for debate. I'll tell you what I think he absolutely would have won was a Masters 1000. And for me, he's on a very, very short list of best players ever to not have won a Masters 1000 title. He is 0-4 in Masters 1000 finals. Those four losses, 3 to Novak, 1 to Rafa, which kind of, spells it out. And he was
There you go.
competing. I remember speaking to him, I think it was in maybe around 2019, actually. And I asked him, what is it like playing in an era with the three greatest tennis players we have ever seen? Is it ever frustrating to think I could have achieved more? And he said, I'm so beyond grateful to get to challenge myself against these, three, at times four with Andy Murray, unbelievable players. Like he felt very, he felt like it was a special thing to be playing in such a great generation of unique, unbelievable talents. So I love that he embraced that challenge and was always trying to get the most out of himself.
And that was genuine too, I think, when he said that. Like if someone had asked me and I was playing during that time, I'd be like, I was pissed off. Like that would have frustrated me to no ends, you know what I mean? But I think Milos genuinely did appreciate having those moments and testing himself against those guys and having, some results there too. So look, we've had him on the podcast numerous times. He's always been super generous to us. We'd say, hey, could you come on for a 15, 20-minute interview? and then we get to the 35, 40-minute mark and he'd still be going, right? So he never was a clock watcher. He always gave generously of his time. He gave generously last year when we had our GoFundMe to support the podcast and donated $1,000, which was, again, like, hats off to Milos for doing that. And he's always appreciated the work we've done. As much as I've appreciated the conversations in press conferences and in passing at tournaments, it's the conversations that were off the record between me and him over the years that I really appreciated. And I think back to Davis Cup in Montreal. Well, you and I were there. What was that, 2024, I think, almost 2 years ago?
Yeah.
When we were there, and speaking to him just in like the players' lounge. And we chatted about like family, and we chatted about having kids, and him and his wife did not have any kids yet at the time, but he was peppering me with questions about it. And I'm like, okay, these guys must be getting close to pulling the trigger on this one and starting a family. And he said to me, as we kind of mused about when he might hang up the racket, he said, I don't know exactly, but when I have kids, that'll be it for me. I don't see us traveling all over the world with a child. And he said, hats off to the players that do it, but it's not how I see, parenthood going. And sure enough, him and his wife, Camille, had their first child in October. And here we are just a few months later. He's going to now do that on a full-time basis. And, we're pretty happy for him to move into that phase of life now.
Yeah, I think good timing on his part with this retirement. And look, we're kind of closing the chapter books on this generation of players. We think of Asher Pospisil's retirement this past summer, Jeannie Bouchard's retirement in Montreal, which was such a special moment for her as well. I mean, this previous generation of Canadian tennis players have sort of officially hung it up, and
they did their part. They did what
really
they had to do, right? And then some, and then some.
Exactly.
And and they inspired that next generation. You mentioned it earlier, like Felix in 2023 when Milos was coming back to play. Felix talked, glowingly about the impact that Milos had when he was a youngster, and the conversations they'd have and the practices they'd have. And, you could tell that people were it wasn't just about what Milos accomplished on the court. He had an impact in the locker room. He had an impact in the training environment as well with those young players. And it'll be interesting to see if he maintains any relationship with the sport. Certainly the sport's not done with him. I mean, he'll be inducted into the National Bank Open Hall of Fame. He'll be inducted into the Canadian Tennis and Canadian Sports and the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah,
that's a no-brainer. At some point, I would assume they'll do something this summer in his hometown here in Toronto. Even though the women are here, I'm sure they'll do something on court to honor him in front of his friends and family. And we'll be having him back on the podcast soon to chat about all this too.
Of course. Let's shift course, and we'll go over to our first international event to kick off 2026. I think it's a fun one. And, it was previously called ATP Cup when the women were not a part of this. And we used to have Hopman Cup, which I know you're a fan of. That combined men's and women's tennis. United Cup is doing the same thing. Poland capturing the title over Switzerland. And look, a lot of results sort of shaping how this went. But for me, a few standout players in this tournament. Hubert Hurkacz has made an unbelievable return to the circuit after missing, over 6 months due to injury. And Belinda Bencic, who has always seemed to represent Switzerland so incredibly well when she plays international tennis. I had the thought, these are both guests of our podcast, and what a start to the season for both of them. Poland gets the title despite Iga Świątek losing her final 2 singles matches. They win in doubles to get the title over Switzerland. It is Belinda Bencic winning MVP.
I love this event just because it is something different and unique, and I love the team dynamic. And I did always like the Hopman Cup, especially when Roger Federer would be out there. And Federer and Bencic played together a lot. I mean,
they did.
Talk about Bencic performing. I mean, she always showed up and played great next to Roger Federer. No pressure, playing mixed alongside like the greatest men's player of that at the time, And now she was playing with Stan there. Was Stan Wawrinka there? I believe
he was. Stan was there.
Again, talk about pressure. You're playing with another, great tennis player of your home country and someone who's retiring at the end of this season. So pressure to perform in his last United Cup. And she delivered. She delivered going 5-0 in singles and beating Świątek. And look at all she's done in the last 14 months since coming back from starting her own family and getting back into the top 10 for the first time in 3 years or something along those lines. I mean, incredible going back to last summer and making the semifinals at Wimbledon. So great to see her starting her season as the MVP of the United Cup, in fact, and maybe that really bodes well for her to try and get that first slam. That for all the talent and all the success she's had in some of these team events and events that she's representing her country, double Olympic medalist from a few years ago, she is still missing that first Grand Slam final, let alone first championship trophy at a major. And I wonder, heading into Australia, you got to throw her into your top 5 to 7 favorites, I would say, actually.
Absolutely. And look, when we kind of make those short lists of like best players without a major currently, and ironically, Madison Keys for me used to always be on that list in prior years. And then she broke that and got her maiden title in Australia last year. For me, if I'm looking at, the current state of the WTA, who are those great players who they just haven't been able to break through and win a major? Right up at the top for me, Belinda Bencic and Alina Svitolina, to me, are those two names. They've had wonderful, fantastic careers, so many great results. It just hasn't come together completely at a major. And look, Bencic is
Good
at
start.
semis at Wimbledon. Yeah.
And good starts to the season for both of them, because Svitolina, did she host a trophy?
Yes, she did.
I think, right?
Hong Kong, or yeah.
Yeah, no, just recently, right? Like I'm gonna
Was
say,
it in Hong Kong? I
Auckland or
forget.
Brisbane, or I don't know, where was she?
That's oh yeah, Auckland. You're right, Auckland.
Auckland.
Yeah. So
It's
there you
tough
go.
this time of season, to get back into the groove. We're gonna get there.
There's a lot happening.
We're shaking off the rust, just like the players.
Yeah, we should brief recap of Canada, who did not escape the group stage. They did win their first tie. Felix Auger-Aliassime getting one win in singles, but then losing to Zizou Bergs of Belgium. Victoria Mboko falling to Elise Mertens, but also getting a win. So,
It's a start.
it's a start. I would have liked to see Felix probably beat Zizou Bergs. I know Bergs was kind of hot during the match, but it felt like watching Felix, his first match, play so comfortable and confident. It looked familiar to the way he was playing at Flushing Meadows. I thought he was going to comfortably beat Bergs too, just with his weapons, his serve, his forehand, being able to take time and space away. But I'm cautiously optimistic that he's going to fare well in Melbourne.
Felix is one of those players I wish, like, the 2025 season could have just not stopped and just continued. Just let him keep playing. Just let him keep going. Don't slow the momentum.
Yeah.
He was so hot from the U.S. Open onwards. And it's a shame that had to sort of have a pause, but good to recharge and refresh. And I know him and Alexei Galino, who are best buddies, must have had a ton of fun playing together in this event, or being on the same team together. We had Alexei on the podcast just before New Year's, and he mentioned to me that one of the highlights and the reason that he picked ATP Cup over any other event that he could have gone United Cup over any other event to start the year, was he really wanted to have that time with his good buddy. So that's cool to see. I think for Vicky Mboko, also really neat to get her in. I mean, she's only been around for so long at the professional level when you think about it. So to get her out there and playing alongside some of those established presences in Canadian tennis is also good. And my goodness, are we ever high on what she could accomplish this coming season? You spoke to her at the tail end of 2025 as well.
Yeah.
I just feel like even with Milos retiring and Vasek retiring, we still have such depth in Canadian tennis that when it comes to Billie Jean King Cup and Davis Cup, we haven't seen the last of Canada contending and making it deep at those two events with the players that we have.
No, certainly not. And Mboko playing this week right now, and Adelaide actually picked up an opening round win over Haddad Maya, which was a tough 3-set win. And she has Kalinskaya, also former guest of Matchboy Canada.
I'll take Vicky in that one. I'll take Vicky in that one for sure.
Yeah, why not? Why not? She's looking confident as ever. Has picked up where she left off towards the tail end of the season. Australian Open qualies. I just want to mention a few of the names that we do have, and a couple names who lost. But I was approaching it in a glass half full sense that I was like, there are a lot of Canadians playing qualifying, and the fact that Kayla Cross, if you haven't listened, I spoke to her at the front end of the season, was actually our first episode. She got her ranking inside the top 200, and she was playing Australian Open qualifying, lost 7-5 in the third in a tough match. Cadence Brace, another recent guest just in the fall last year. is now a top 200 player and was playing in qualies. Carson Brandstein is in the mix. Alexei Galarneau, he got an absolutely brutal draw, I will say, against Nishesh Basavareti, an unbelievable talent. He lost there. But a lot of names. Liam Draxel still is playing. Marina Stakusic won her first round qualifying match. So we have, depth outside that top 100 too. There are a lot of names sprinkled in. Unfortunately, Rebecca Marino recovering from injury. She's not there, but there are still a lot of Canadians down under right now.
And it just speaks to that, in that 100 to 200 range, particularly, I feel on the women's tour, we've got a lot of names in there right now, and they're still young and they're still, coming into their own as professional tennis players. Give them a little more time. We could have a whole bunch in the top 100, which would be
For sure.
kind of breaking new ground for the country, to be honest. Like we've been spoiled over the last 10 years with having top 10 presences, Jeannie, Bianca, Layla, Dennis and Felix, of course, Milos. But we haven't always had the backup to those top players. And now it seems like we're getting that, which is, they're looking at each other, they're pushing each other. Look at what Gabriel Diallo did last year in terms of, we talked for a while about how we thought he was going to be the top ranked Canadian man by the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's how well he was playing, and also how Dennis and Felix were struggling through the first 6 months of the season. So, will be interesting to see as well players like him and how they can consolidate on those big steps forward from 2025.
Yeah, of course. I just want to wrap on Aussie Open news or just general tennis news. Stan Wawrinka, who played great at United Cup, got one win and, pushed Hurkacz to 3 sets, had another really tight 3-setter, I think, with Kaboli, announcing it's his final season. He's past the age of 40, I believe now. What an unbelievable career. And, when you think of great players who are able to challenge the very best, I mean, Stan Wawrinka is right at the top of the list to be able to win 3 majors in the era he did, and still out there competing and wanting his shot against this current generation and current slate of players. My goodness, he still plays such beautiful tennis for his age. Maybe I shouldn't even add that caveat. He just
Stop saying for his age, because I'm like 5 years older than him, so it's really hurting my feelings.
No,
that's cutting deep.
I am gonna stop. He plays beautiful tennis, and he always has, and he's one of those players. Look, I think with the big three and maybe Andy as well, you have your Roger fans, you have your Rafa fans, you have your Novak fans. Everyone seems to love Stan the Man. There's no debate on it, and the crowds absolutely were going crazy for his tennis at United Cup. It was special to see.
I think, the tennis fandom on the men's side is so split between the big three that it's hard for anyone to take one of those big three as their second favorite. But a lot of people could agree that maybe take Stan in that role, or Andy Murray, right? A little less threatening to their favorite player. And I think about what he did, winning 3 slams during that era. There should be a multiplier effect. We've said it before. That should count as like 6 slams,
Yeah.
In any other, tying like Becker and Edberg and those guys.
Yeah.
And think also of just him playing in the shadow of his fellow Swiss player, Roger Federer. Like, from the same country, you've won 3 slams, but you're nowhere close to the other guy from Switzerland and never will be able to. And the fact that he was able to get those majors under, the shadow of Roger Federer and carrying around that pressure, I think is remarkable. The fact that he won 3 separate majors is pretty cool too, having an Aussie Open, a French Open, and a US Open. I mean, that makes it super special as well, I think. And yeah, it pains me to see people younger than me retiring from professional sports now, but this is the phase of life that I'm in. And it's just cool to see him, in his early 40s and still out there. And on any given day, that guy can give someone trouble still.
Absolutely. I'm excited to watch him at Australian Open. Granted, that main draw wild card, of course. Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.